So we know that founders always are built of something that's so different. And it's not just about the mindset, but it's about each one of us being global citizen, traveling different aspects, traveling worlds, and understanding that how to build something that not just inspires people, but creates an impact in their lives, which goes with them, not with just with the product, with the service, so many things. And we know that each one of us as a founder is built different. And to inspire and I'd say add on to this entire set of what we've been building, I'd love to invite our amazing guest, Shadva. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today. She has been building Consider, which is helping founders, entrepreneurs, and in near future now non-tech entrepreneurs actually choose the life that they want to build for themselves, be curious, get out of the fog, and as the host of Looks Like Work, she actually closed a startup during the pandemic and has navigated entire shift, which I'd love if you talk about it, splitting your life between Israel, US, and working with SMB startups. It is so much about showing up, and as you mentioned about unshrinking and then going through the moves through which you grew. It's a pleasure to host such a personality like you today with us at Founders Across Borders.
Thank you so much, Yukta. I am so excited to be here and I'm a fan of the show. And also, the moment I saw the title of the show, I was like, this is me. It resonates so much. So, really, really excited to be here with you.
Wow, I'd love to understand that how you navigated, like being in Israel and then moving to States and then actually maintaining a lifestyle being in both the places. We all know that Israel has been the startup nation, and it's evident. I mean, you've been a tech entrepreneur, and now you're actually helping tech entrepreneurs and non-tech people deep dive into the founder's mindset. So, how did this actually start? Like you building your own tech venture in the beginning?
Yeah, so kind of being across borders is just what I was born into. My mom was born here in Israel and grew up in the States, in New York, and I was born there and then grew up between the places. And I feel like so many of us across borders, I feel like I belong in both places, but I feel like nobody understands me. In either of the places, so I feel like a lot of founders, there's a search for belonging and to help other people feel like they belong. And that was also actually what got me into becoming a tech founder because I started my way in the publishing world. I was a translator, and then I was a creative entrepreneur in the world of design and lifestyle. But one of the things that I saw, and this is back 10 years ago in 2015, so a few years before 2015, a lot of my clients were women who had kids and decided to leave the corporate world to start small businesses in the world of design or lifestyle, which is where, those were the worlds that I worked in, helping businesses do marketing and content and PR, influencer marketing before it was called influencer marketing, and help local people get into the US, which is also across borders. But I started seeing this pattern of so many women, talented, hardworking, deciding to leave the corporate world after they had their first or second children. And I started having a lot of conversations with them and understanding how the workplace culture was not inclusive and was not built for many different kinds of people, especially parents, especially women. And I was like, hey, I shouldn't be working on this because my business is doing well. And this is just it's taking a huge part of my brain every day. And eventually I said, okay, I'll do a survey for women in the workplace. And probably nobody will ever take the survey. And then I can just stop thinking about this. But what I didn't know was that the survey was going to go viral,
Oh.
and 500 women from 56 different countries took this survey within 1 week. And this was a 30 question survey. So it was very long, very tedious, about issues that are very painful. So I didn't think anybody would want to answer it. And they all shared their personal stories. And a lot of them then reached out to me and said, okay, so I understand that you're building an app to help women get more access to opportunities in the workplace. Um, I want to hear about it. And I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know how to build an app. I do know how to build a business. I had two businesses by that point, but not a tech or product business. But I guess, I guess I'll need to do it. So
Of
the good
course.
thing was that so many of the women who took the survey were also in tech, in UX, in product, in R&D. So we did a hackathon where we did a brainstorming and we got a lot of ideas. Eventually, I built my team. My co founder, Hanit, joined me. We're still really, really good friends to this day. And we decided to do it inside organizations. And it was a peer to peer mentoring platform. And we ended up working with Fortune 500 companies such as Meta, Siemens, and also growing startups and scale ups. We eventually closed the startup during COVID because we were supposed to raise our seed round in March
Oh,
2020. And that, of course, didn't happen.
okay.
Uh, but still, it was such an incredible journey of a little bit over 5 years. We learned so much, and we really got to participate in the future of work in HR tech before those were big buzzwords. So that was a real privilege, and actually like helping people, especially during the lockdowns when all those people in those multi national corporates were flying to different countries to be at home with their families, and they felt so disconnected and so alarmed, and they had like emerged as a way to connect to other people. So that was a real honor to serve them that way.
Wow, that's so interesting to know the entire journey that you've talked about and being in a tech space wherein now, of course, people talk about it is because we've been through an entire pandemic and now remote work, global compliance is our thing. Back then, in office was such a huge structure and nobody really talked about HR tech and probably now we all know that HR is changing so much. And as we talk about, like funding and getting into the VC rounds, how was that for you? I mean, how did you reach out to the people and like find out people who'd be interested in what you do and like someone who initially, anyone who starts building their own product has less idea about how VCs work. But then as you deep dive, how did you explore that entire VC space for yourself?
Wow, that's such a good question because the whole concept of raising money was so foreign to me because I did have two businesses before that, but they were service providing business where the business model is basically I provided a service and I get money, right? And
Right.
here it was clear that we needed the money to build the product and also that there was like a very big potential. Um, which we kind of talked about before it became such a big thing, as you said. So it was clear that we would need to raise money, and that would help us really capture more of a market. We were also so we had a few challenges because first of all, we were talking about future of work in HR tech when this wasn't a thing yet, and also locally, the startups in Israel were very much cybersecurity and deep tech, and this was considered like fluff. So the local investors, most of them didn't really think that this was like worth it. Now there's a big HR tech industry here as well, but that was not true then. Also, we were like a very different kind of team. We were both founders. We were women. I was ultra orthodox, and that was very very different and uncommon here. So there was a lot of bias. Well, my co-founder is gay, so it's like very different. um, so all of those things led to actually us having more luck raising money in the US and Canada than in Israel. And we were very lucky to get a few angel investors here, especially one angel investor that initially she comes from the HR world, so she really understood the need. She was HR at Intel, so she really really understood the need for platforms like these. And she said, first of all, I'm going to give you $5,000, which is not much. And this is going to fund for you to participate in a delegation of founders to the Silicon Valley. So that's how I got there. And while I was there, I closed Meta as our first client when
Wow.
we just had $5,000 in the bank. Can you imagine? And then it was easier to get other investors. We ultimately raised a bit over $800,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was definitely through human connection. I think people really resonated. I would write a lot on social media, what people today call building in public or working in public.
Yeah.
I would share like kind of how it is to be on flights constantly, how it is to build like different events we pitched at and what worked and what didn't work, our little wins and our little losses. And investors who ultimately, eventually invested in us told me that it wasn't just the idea, it wasn't just the product, it was also really kind of feeling that they were along for the ride and that they knew how my brain worked. That made them it easy for them to trust me and the team. And later on, we worked on a larger $3 million round that was supposed to close in March 2020, but of course didn't because there was the first lockdown. But still, that was mostly through investors who already angel invested in us and had
Ah.
connections there. Yeah.
Wow. So, do you think that having a gateway to Silicon Valley, like an access to the place wherein founders are building something crazy, like I always feel that Silicon Valley is at least 50 years ahead of what the world is at, is because something that grows over there, people do not have an idea, oh, this is that a thing? And I'm like, yeah, that's a thing. And you can absolutely take that as an idea and do that for your country if you feel like. It's because I think it's going to take at least 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe, the time it flies or like it becomes something that's viable for you. You have a first mover's advantage. The second part is, of course, people don't act, but how much do you feel that it's important to actually have a foot in like Silicon Valley and amongst the founders, those who are like crazy maniacs changing the world?
Yeah, good question. So, as you said before, back in the day, the office and being in person was so important. And I feel like the only people who were like really were using Zoom were people across borders. So now it's more accessible, but still I have felt that it makes such a difference to be on the ground there. Even if you're not based out of there, it's like much easier to be a remote founder these days. But actually being there, understanding the vibe, meeting the people, creating trust, understanding how their head works, and what is like the state of mind there is really, really key, especially if you're going to sell to them or to raise money from them, which is basically the same thing, in a different capacity. You need to really gain a deep understanding, even if most of the time or part of the time you're not there. There's something about visiting there for not like a day or two, just being there enough that helps you get it and helps you tailor your messaging and also your product to that. Of course, nowadays there are a lot of different tech capitals around the world where you can raise money, but in many verticals, especially the ones that are more visionary, that's going to be the place that you want to go. And even if you don't live there or base your office out of there, at least have a significant amount of understanding of how they work, create connections, establish trust.
That's so important. I mean, working in places wherein, and you talk about human connections first. So we so many times talk about cold outreaching and reaching out to people, or maybe like doing other things to like get jobs, get opportunities, or maybe like get funding. How much do you think that? Cold outreach is effective versus if you want to like go to a location and like interact with people in person with less. I mean, I do not know if I'm going to find the people out there. I'm just like testing my market by showing up at events and like saying, hey, that's what I did in New York and Boston so many times. Like I just showed up at events and I'm like, hey, this is what I do. And
I love it.
so that was fun. But then again, it's a lot of hit and trial of like going to these sort of events and finding people. So what do you think works the best? I mean, is it the cold outreach or is it hit the location and like find the market?
Honestly, I feel like it's a mix. I feel like the human connection works best, but I feel like in order for the human connection to work, a lot of times you'll want to first have like done the foundational work of either cold outreach or like doing research and seeing how you can get to that person before. I can tell you a story. So when we had that investor who gave us $5,000, there was a
Mm-hmm.
delegation of female founders to the Silicon Valley. And I went there. And one of the days, I didn't think I would participate in that day because that day was a tour of Facebook before it was called Meta, the offices, which
Yeah,
is
right.
really cool. But I have been there before. And also that day, I had a really, really important pitch Zoom meeting to pitch uh, international bank. And that was something that I worked on for months. Like the one of the people at the executives at the bank saw me speaking at an event, and she did a lot of work to get me to the HR department. And finally, we had that pitch meeting. So I said, like, I can't go to tour Facebook, which is really cool, but I've already been there when I have this sales meeting that could make it or break it. It could be our first corporate client. And then the person who ran the delegation told me, listen, I really think you should come to Facebook. I'll make sure that you have a room to do your pitch Zoom meeting from, but I think you should come. And that happened. And during that time, first of all, it wasn't just a tour. They really got us to meet with some very high up people. And it was very exciting. But also, one of the country managers, not of the US, happened to be there
Right.
during that time. And someone who knew him told him, oh, you should talk to Chedva. Apparently, this is like completely serendipity. Apparently, he just did an employee survey recently before that. And he got to the conclusion that they needed to give employees more resources for mentoring. And what happened was we later that day, or I think maybe the day after, we went and had coffee in University Avenue in Palo Alto. I brought my laptop, but he said, like, just tell me about the platform. You don't need to do me the pitch deck. And we ended up signing on a pilot for a pilot program for 100 people there.
Oh,
And without him even seeing the product. And that was like just a human moment, no pitch deck, no demo. And I couldn't have, predicted it. As you said, I've done so many times where I would go to an event or I would go to a meeting and nothing came out of it. Or sometimes something would happen, like with this person from the bank, and then it would lead to something, but then we never actually signed with them. But I do believe that when it works better than anything else. So I feel like it should be a combined approach of you do the research, you do the cold outreach, you do the warm outreach through, a contact of a contact of a contact. And you also understand that at the end of the day, you're dealing with people. It doesn't matter if it's B2B or B2C, it's people. And probably there will be a human moment that will be even more powerful than all of that.
wow, that makes a lot of sense, like since you've mentioned about how this works and you just got that funding based on the connection. I mean, like the person was interested in you as a person and believed in you and like said, wow, this is the best thing that you've been doing. And then of course, the conversation led into another space. And then you're closing the client into like, again, a long-term association. So how much do you feel, like since you're building something, I mean, right now you're building Consider, so, and you've made like a switch. So, firstly, how did you decide onto this space, that you want to make a switch and the things that have been working for you in this space, you need to like switch to Consider, like this is the time for you to make that switch. switch and use the old connections from the previous startup into this space?
Yeah, so there was another step in between. During COVID, I we understood quite immediately that we're going to need to close the startup, and I had a lot of conversations with fellow founders about it and about where they were in the situation, and even startups that did not have to close. You remember back in the beginning of the pandemic, before there was like the big boom in the industry, there was a lot of fear. And many of them shared with me that they were going to hire a CMO, but now they didn't have, on the one hand, they didn't have the budget to hire someone. On the other hand, they had to have more marketing and sales because suddenly they had to bring tangible sales and revenue results.
Right.
So I understood that this is something that I could help with, and I immediately started a marketing agency for startups and later on tech companies that existed for 5 years. And we worked with from startups at the post seed stage to companies at the post IPO stage. It was like
Wow.
a really, really great opportunity also for me to grow as a manager because we were completely asynchronous, remote, global, like each person on my team was in a different country. So that was great. But I really, really missed the excitement and the purpose that I felt when I built Emerge. Because even though Emerge was definitely, business first and a startup, and we raised money and we had corporate clients, it started from a social justice, cause. And I looked for a way to combine, both the purpose and what I do well professionally and also what I can, make money doing. And that's where Consider was born, especially because in the last few years, I got divorced. So it made me think about a lot about purpose and like how do I want to build my next step, my entrepreneurship and my career. So Consider is ultimately a lot of things that I've done in the past. I've Out of my 18 years of my career, 15 years of them, I was advising or consulting or guiding or mentoring founders and executives in different industries and about different things. Uh, and then the purpose part is really helping them with founder mindset and helping them with something that I really, really, really feel that is core to my being, which is whatever you do, start with a question and don't look for the exclamation mark, but look for the question mark. And I feel, especially in times of volatility and uncertainty, like everywhere in the world, basically these days,
Yeah,
um,
right.
we're craving more certainty and exclamation marks, but the more we go towards that, the volatility just becomes even worse. So I feel when you, as a founder or as an executive or a leader, in any capacity, actually embrace the question mark, embrace question, embrace leadership in uncertainty, that's when you actually create more stability. And that's what Consider is all about. Whether I'm working, like right now, I'm working with a corporate team on their positioning strategy, I'm working with a small business founder on the very foundations of his business, and I'm working on my program for non-tech founders. And it all has to do with how you deal with uncertainty, who you are as a founder or as a leader. What's your thesis, whether it's as a corporate leader or as a founder, that leads you and is like kind of your core, and helps you stay certain inside uncertainty, and then how you translate that into strategy and keep asking yourself questions all the time. Because the minute we just like, rest on our laurels and like, oh yeah, I know that, I've done that, I'll just continue doing it out of sheer, um, physics, I'll just continue with my, the car's already on the road. That's when we sometimes lose ourselves inside the business. And when there's like volatility, we wouldn't know how to deal with it. So questioning and keeping curious keeps things interesting, but also keeps them healthy, I believe.
So, how did you navigate? I mean, you've mentioned your own space of like where you said that, like like unshrinking the biases and then actually moving ahead. developing a human connection. So when that transition was happening in your life, how did you actually put that into a business idea that, hey, this is how I am as a person, and my business should be an extension of who I am as a person, as you mentioned. So how did that shift happen? Is because today so many of us want to think of like, this is, another revolutionary idea, like what NASA did, and someone taught this to me that, hey, you know what, invention is done by people in robotics and NASA. So it's NASA, and over here these are the two organizations that are into inventions. You can absolutely not reinvent the wheel, but hop onto a wheel, and then you can make your own millions if you want to do that. So you don't want to be a scientist to open a business. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean,
Interesting.
how was that for you, when you actually did something that was so tech focused and helping people in HR tech, and then doing the shift with Consider right now?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting how everything tied together. So there were two times of my life that I really felt like I was shrinking. And I'm a very vocal person. I'm a podcaster like you. I love public speaking. I process my life through writing on social media. So I'm not a wallflower, but two times in my life where I felt like I was shrinking and kind of gaslighting myself. And it also affected my business and my career. One was after I shut down Emerge, and my identity was so tied into the startup that I was like, oh my God, who am I without it? So it
Yeah.
was kind of
Oh.
an identity crisis. And the second time was during my divorce. I also left the ultra Orthodox community, and there were a lot of voices of like, no, you should be ashamed, you shouldn't speak up. And I actually felt like I was absorbing it. And when I finally got my divorce, I went to talk to investor Fiona Darmon. She's amazing. She's an incredible human being. She's been a female investor when there nowadays, thankfully, there are more and more, but she's been in this field for like 30 years, I believe, or 20 or five or something like that. And she also invested in Emerge as an angel investor. And then a year ago, I was selected to participate in a mentoring program by Meta, and she was matched to me again as my mentor. And that was exactly when I was like debating whether I would continue with my marketing agency or start something new, or maybe continue with my agency but make that something new. And finally, I went to meet her, and she said, why don't you take a few months off and write a book? And I looked at her shocked, and I was like, am I allowed to do that? Like, I don't think I ever took any time off, like, if I didn't have to, if I wasn't sick or had a baby or something like that. And she goes,
Yeah.
yes, like, just go and work on it. And immediately I knew that my book will be about how, when you find yourself stuck in a situation, how you can take yourself out of that situation or that narrative using questions. And I started like really writing it and writing questions that you could use. And after a few months, I understood that this book will happen at some point. But what felt even more urgent was that I understood there's actually a framework here, a methodology that could help people in their business and in their like life, whether they were in an organization or a founder. And it felt like very urgent to actually create that methodology and create those frameworks. And as I was working in it, working on creating those frameworks, I was working also on applying them to myself. And I understood that this is going to be my new business. And that became Consider, where I do a lot of work. It could be about positioning, it could be about marketing, but it's all through the lens of question asking and what I call ruthless introspection meets radical empathy. So that's how it was born, and it's in many ways thanks to Fiona.
That's so beautiful because Fiona being an angel investor, and you're like someone you could like rely on for so many different things, and she actually became that guiding light to deep dive into, aspects of your life that you didn't even think of, and like you absolutely got into writing a book. So how are these experiences of, when like we all say that we need to have a mentor, sometimes a mentor or someone can give you an outlook that maybe you never thought of, or thought of but then didn't look or maybe deep dived into it. So in that context, when you consult founders or when you work one on one with them, what are the things that you make them uncover? Is because as a founder, so many things that they have figured it out. Maybe marketing is not working for them. Maybe they haven't figured out the product market fit. So I don't think a lot of founders deep dive into their own self, or or that they are looking for like, of course, performance coaching could be one thing, but then they're like mindset. Yeah, we have that. We're already on fire. So like, what are the first, like the first principles of your sessions with them that you like are like non-negotiables?
This is so true because as a founder, we're also, and especially as doers, it's so easy to just be go, 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 and something is working, or even if it's not really working, but it's working good enough, and you're just going to continue to run. And it feels like there's no time. And sometimes it's not just time. I think sometimes it's scary to look inside and to have some real introspection and reflection. So it depends with each founder or leader at what they're coming to me with and at what stage they are. But there's a very big emphasis on reflection and introspection. And one thing that I talk about a lot is gateway questions, because this is something that I've felt on myself and I've seen with clients and I've seen with colleagues and with friends, that a lot of times we have this like big looming intimidating question. I always, like, if someone's watching this on video, I'm like kind of signaling it behind my head, because I always feel like it's in our back of our heads. There's like this big question and we're running away from it, like we're going forward. That's why we're not stopping. And honestly, maybe someone else would tell this founder or leader to stop and deal with this big question. But I feel it can be quite cruel to deal with it. And sometimes you'll feel completely stuck. You won't even know where to start. And what I prefer is gateway questions. So it's taking like this big dilemma and breaking it down into small actionable questions that are more bite-sized. You can actually deal with them, whether it's with yourself or whether it's an issue with your co-founder that you're not facing, or whether it's an issue with a client, an investor, a vendor, right? So it could be with yourself or with other people. So first of all, it helps you get away into dealing with it. That's not that scary and frightening. The second thing is that it gets you into the habit of asking yourself questions. So, and then hence, dealing with stuff. So the more gateway questions, actionable small bite-sized questions you get into, the more you'll also be able to deal with the big stuff. And I can walk you through the framework if you want, but also I created a custom GPT
Wow.
that is just, it's helpful because you can just write your dilemma and it's not going to solve your dilemma. If it solves your dilemma for you or tries to, then that's wrong. That means I didn't create the GPT well. The purpose of the GPT is not to solve it. It's actually to give you back two or three small questions that are more specific that you can start from. So you can either use the framework yourself or go through the GPT.
Yeah, I was about to say you're gonna say that it gives you more dilemma. I was like, wow, that's gonna be so interesting. It's like you're stuck, now feel more stuck. Hell, now the heaven comes. So when the heaven comes, they would be like, this is actually heaven. It's because I've been through hell.
Totally. No, but the idea is like it stops being like this huge thing that's unmanageable and it becomes like very specific. And at the end of the day, when I work one on one or in my programs, definitely some of what we work on is being able to sit with those questions and deal with them. instead of running away from them into the next dilemma, because then that only creates more chaos. And the minute you'll have to stop because life just stops you, you'll understand that you're in a big tangle of chaos, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And amidst this chaos, like even when you're navigating chaos, I think one important question that each founder struggles with, and each one of us has also been through the phase, is the scaling question. Like you have a product or maybe a service, but you're like scaling. Even though the chaos within is there, it might be expanding or it might be limited, but this question haunts you every time. So, how can, like, what is a growth hack or a playbook that you figured out for yourself and you are like, in most cases, this playbook works. And then once you like implementing this, that's when you're also like sorting the chaos within, like first executing on these growth steps and then meanwhile solving the chaos within.
Yeah. So first of all, I feel like chaos often works when we're small. It's manageable, but actually, we need to deal with it when we want to scale, because stuff that, in the beginning, Zuckerberg famously said, break stuff, um, and or like do things that don't scale. So you can thrive with chaos. Sometimes it even like kind of fuels your creativity in the beginning. But if you want to scale, the chaos will stop it. So it's either you're going to deal with things first and then scale, or you're going to try scaling, understand you need to untangle the chaos, and then scale. Having said that, I think really understanding what your business is about, because we think we know what our business is about, but honestly, a lot of times we don't know. That's where I would definitely employ some question marks. What actually makes the things that work? What makes the things that don't work not work? And really kind of taking it into like understanding the infrastructure of your business, and then seeing where can I scale, where can I take care of the things that don't work, where can I scale the things that do work. So whether it is taking those processes that work and productizing them, whether it is collaborating with other companies to get to new audiences, all of this comes from reflecting on your business and then getting a deeper understanding of it. And then it's so much easier to see where there are the opportunities to scale. And of course, delegation is one of the hardest things to do. I found it very, very hard, but in my business that I had, the agency I had after Emerge, that was really a school for me for delegation. And I think the first time in my career where I really succeeded in delegating, and even, remotely and asynchronously. But a lot of that success in delegation and in scale came out of actually taking the time to understand the infrastructure of the business.
Truly, I mean, it's so much about the infra and navigating through shifts. And since you work with now founders from different industries and different backgrounds, based on your founder and industry understanding, what are the top three industries for the next 5 years that you think anyone should build in, or not? If they are building something else, just buy a business in this industry and you know that you're going to be in profits.
Oh my God, that's a big question. I honestly don't know, but I really, really, really believe in, of course, AI for sure. And that's just going to grow and grow. But also on the other side of the spectrum, I really believe in service providers and especially creative entrepreneurs. And I've seen in the last year or so, because I've went away from that industry of service providers, small creative entrepreneurs for years, because I went into tech. I see how they actually incorporate so much tech and so many products and so much knowledge into what they do. And I really think that large enterprises have a lot to learn from them, and also a big opportunity of actually collaborating with them, even though it's not the go to. Like you'll usually see like large enterprises actually collaborating with vendors that are also larger. I think there's a big opportunity there. Um, yeah, so I think it's always kind of this like give and take between the tangible and the small and the human, and then the deep and advanced tech, AI, quantum, which is just fascinating, and all of that.
Thank you for sharing. This is actually enlightening and a perspective to think about. Like we and deep dive into it is because of course AI is there, and then like services, quantum. I think tech would never be out of space. Like tech is gonna grow more, and that's how we are going to
Yeah,
live in a more interconnected space. Yet, the human side of it would also be something to explore in depth. Is because it's tech and staying human.
exactly. And I think the more tech, deepens and evolves, there will be a craving for the humanity, to kind of set it off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to an interesting segment. It's called Seven Questions to Fame. So I'm gonna ask you seven questions in rapid fire format, and once you're ready, let me know.
Sure.
Cool. So the first question goes like, one industry you feel you should have had a business in, but you don't.
Oh my God. Quantum computing for sure. I should probably not have because I don't know anything about it, but sounds super exciting.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I was in Boston and there was this entire quantum research center and I was walking with the professor and I'm like, oh wait. And she said, I know I have a friend who works in the department. I'm like, oh my God, can you connect me with the person? I want to go inside. And she's like, you're just sounding like a kid in a chocolate factory. And I was like, of course. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but it's just so fascinating.
I have a friend who works in quantum computing and I like hang on to her stories. Like it's so exciting.
Oh, we must do a podcast with him, like three of us. It's
Yeah,
all gonna be fascinating.
totally.
The next question goes like, what is one thing about mindset that you feel you need to remind yourself every day when you're building your dream venture?
Oh wow. I feel like when you don't take care of it, it doesn't take care of you. So it feels like something that is just transparent. It should just be there, and it takes nurturing for sure.
What has been one advice that changed how you build your own businesses?
Wow. I don't think there was one piece of advice, but Fiona's advice to take time off and to write a book was definitely a big one. And I think also back in the day, I had a client who really saw me as a founder. And that really helped me see myself as a founder as well. And that was around the time that Emerge started.
How much do you think the country where you come from impacts the kind of businesses that you build?
It doesn't really because my the industries where I build are not very common in my country, but it definitely because people here in this country understand it less. It makes me become better at explaining it and making it more accessible. And also, it's just a part of who I am because that's how we're built as humans. We're the sum parts of all the places we're from and the people that we meet.
If a founder had no money to invest into marketing for getting funds or like promoting themselves out there, what is the topmost growth hack that you would recommend to them so that they can bring in the first $10,000 to their business?
Definitely build in public. Just document your journey, whether it's TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, which I've been loving lately. That will definitely help people connect to you. And that could be clients, it could be investors. And you could then translate it into a larger, marketing strategy once you have the funds or the team.
Wow, that's so interesting. The next question would be, what are the top three books that you feel anyone should go through at least once in their life?
Oh my God, I've been reading this incredible book in the last few months. I am usually a very, very quick reader, but this one I'm actually purposefully savoring and cherishing. So I only read it after I swim every Friday. It's called The Diamond Cutter, and it's about the Buddhistic approach to business. So that's one book I highly recommend. I'm almost done reading it. The second book I love for business is The Messy Middle by Scott Belsky, who was a founder and then is now a very prominent investor. And it's such a human book without like buzzwords, and it really talks about the messy middle of being a founder. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And then the third book, I'll just recommend The Time Traveler's Wife because I love it. It's been one of my favorite books for the last 20 years. And I feel like there's so much philosophy in it beyond like just the great story.
Wow, that's amazing. I think I'll definitely add those three to my shelf. I have a huge shelf I need to read, so I'm definitely promising to read at least one of the titles.
Awesome. Yeah, the diamond cutter is like I feel like it's changing my life, honestly.
Wow. And the last question would be, after a certain point in time, what do you think matters more? The revenue that your business brings or the purpose with which you start the business?
Okay, I'm definitely biased towards the answer here. I feel like the purpose is also what's going to bring the revenue. And I think if you bring revenue without purpose, you're going to get sick of your own business. So, of course, you need the revenue. That's why we're in business. You need to make a living, you need to grow. But if there's not purpose there, then why are you even doing it? Honestly, just go work for someone else and make a lot of money there.
Perfect. I think that's very comprehensive. And that brings us to another section which is called 90 seconds to teach me something. So if I give you 90 seconds right now, what would you like to talk about?
So I can teach you to find your gateway questions. Would that be interesting to you?
Absolutely. I'd love to deep dive into this.
Awesome. Okay, so let's say you have like a big looming dilemma. Okay, it can be a question, it just can be something that keeps you up at night
Yeah.
and you don't even know how to deal with it. Here's my here's my gateway questions framework. It's called STEP because it's an acronym. So first of all, start where you are. Like just take a look at what's is there, what exists there, beyond the fear, what are actually the realities right inside this dilemma. Second of all is test the waters and play with possibilities. If you can just, if there was no, bad outcome possible, what would you experiment with? That's where you can bring in your inner child or scientist, right? Uh, then you can go and explore the edges and think, what is the edge outcome, the best thing that can happen, the worst thing that can happen. It really makes you face your fear, and then that's not too scary, and also it makes you playful and kind of understand like, oh, maybe I won't go to the edge, but now I understand where I can get in the middle. And lastly, path forward. Now that you've done all of this, and you can do it as a writing experiment, you can record yourself a voice note. You can, do it in a lot of different ways. What's the path forward? How do I take all of this and distill it into something that's actually realistic to start from?
That's actually intuitive, and you need to like deep dive and think about all of these questions, just because there are a few questions that keep you up at night, but then you can never come to a solution, or you at least you feel that you haven't been at a spot wherein you can deep dive or actually come to a conclusion. So how would you recommend, I mean, since you are like navigating the toughest part of these questions, what should you be like thinking of? I mean, thinking of, like, as you mentioned, extreme parts, the best and the worst. So if you have forget those two areas, how will you distill that down into coming to an answer that like does not solves your problem?
Yeah, so I can tell you recently I helped a friend with her question. She's an amazing coach and she's really, really great at what she does. But she's been finding it very, very hard to ask her clients for testimonials because she feels like if she asks them for testimonials, that means that she needs more clients. Like that puts her
Yeah.
in like a scarcity, place. Um, and when I put that dilemma into the GPT that I built with the gateway question, it asked her some really great questions. So the start where you are was a question about like, why actually does this connect to like you think it makes you less than? The test the waters is like, what if you tested, if you like now decided you're a different persona, like like we tell the AI, we prompt it, you are now a marketing expert. So what if you now tested the waters as someone who is super confident, and then you write this message to your clients out of this like mindset. The explore the edges was like, what could surprise you? What do you think that your clients would say? What is like the most positive thing and the most like negative thing?
Hmm.
And then the path forward, what happened was like after she went through, and you really need to sit down and like write it, whether you write it back into the GPT, you write it in your notebook, you write it, I have my own WhatsApp with myself, one, or, record it in a voice message, but you really need to like sit with it. That's like at the end of the day, that's the real secret. Once you've gone through all that, you're more likely to feel comfortable with it and understand that there's actually a way to ask for those like testimonials in a way that would feel good for you.
Oh yeah, that makes so much of sense is because I think the major difference is the scarcity versus the abundant mindset that each one of us needs to work on and feel the abundance within to actually embrace that abundance mindset out there in terms of like no matter how much you talk about sustainability, we still know that whatever you have on this planet, resources, money, is enough for you. I mean, more than enough for you. I mean, if
Yeah.
you'd stop thinking about a future generation, it can suffice your entire life in the best way possible. So, and that abundance, I think, shifts so much within as well. So, like to actually like deep dive into a few areas, and you might feel that maybe we would have missed on a few topics maybe. So what is one topic, like we do this segment of like finding out a topic. So which topic do you feel right now is something that we should have a discussion on, or you feel is important for us to cover in this conversation?
Yeah. So, one thing that I feel very passionate about right now is unshrinking, and basically making peace with taking up space with our full personality, not in terms of like, oh, if I'm taking up space, I need to be, to erase my personality and take on the persona of whatever a founder looks like. But how can I take up space as myself, as Chedva, as Yokta, because I feel like that's, if you're talking about abundance, this is how we bring our own abundance into the world and share it with others through business, through creativity, and of course also in life.
Wow. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing this. Is because you've been through your own moment, and I mean, if you're okay sharing, what was a specific moment which made you feel that you're in that phase when you need to just like now is your moment to shine, and you've been under the covers for so long that now you just need to break all the barriers and get out.
I think definitely after my divorce, where I felt like I was gaslighting myself at some point, I felt like, when I closed Emerge, a friend who was also a founder, she's actually now a client, told me something that deeply, deeply touched me. And she said, like, I so appreciate that throughout this whole journey, you stayed who you are and you stayed true to your values. And that was correct. That like really hearing her say it made me so happy. But I also felt that what I didn't do was I didn't shape my founder journey as I wanted. I just followed the paradigm, like the roadmap. You do the MVP, you raise money, and I didn't stop and question, like, should I do this? Should I actually do it differently? Should I start from a different, client? Should I actually raise money after this? So one of the things that I deeply committed to was really being who I am, staying true to my values, but also questioning the paradigm and the route. And I think this is a moment where there are so many resources, like there is so much democratization of many resources thanks to AI and thanks to remote work being more prominent, that we can actually afford more to question the paradigms and to see how we bring ourselves and what our intuition tells us over the regular playbooks.
Yeah, that's important, and I think intuition always plays like at different times. Like 99%, when if I had an intuition about someone who's very close to me or about something that I do, it has been true. I mean,
Yeah.
I can always like find other logical reasons to not believe in something, but then deep down I knew that this is gonna happen, and it did. So I think that intuitive feeling is something that keep gives you the edge, and those who can actually practice this feeling and develop on this are at par. And I think that's what you do when you try to work with so many founders out there as well.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm glad it resonates.
Oh, yes. And I'm so glad that we've had this conversation. Edward, so much to learn. And I mean, I'd love to like deep dive into a second episode where we understand different things about how you've been building things, and maybe like do a live on YouTube to like have founders actually see what they can do and how exactly are like the growth playbook specifically for the founders mindset is what you help people that consider. But before we part ways, is there something that you would like to say or talk about?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. And I would absolutely love that. I think what you just said made me think about, founders across borders. I think, especially founders across borders, a lot of times there's this feeling that we need to accommodate, showing up as someone else, and over explain or making other people understand us or making it easier for someone else to kind of process us. And that is true to an extent, but I feel that's exactly where we can unshrink and where we can see where our own personalities and our own backgrounds can enrich the world. So that could be really something very, very cool. And I would love to invite people to check out, Consider and Gravitas and the spaces where we do these things. And one idea that I've been falling in love with in the last couple months is couples therapy for you and your business. So think about it. It just started from me watching couples therapy. I don't know if you saw this TV show in the US. Um, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. What if your business took you to couples therapy? What would it say? What would you say? What would the therapist say? So I would like to leave your listeners with this prompt, which you can just practice with yourself. Or if your AI knows you very well, you can also ask it what it thinks based on the information it has about you. What would your business or startup say about you if it took you to couples therapy, and how would it go from there?
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this. And I think you've actually left a lot of people with food for thought, which they should be talking and thinking about when ever they're in the space. So, I mean, even now, I will be thinking about it post the conversation, and I'll sit with ChatGPT and be like, hey, as much as you know me, help me answer these questions. So, I really appreciate all the insights that you've brought on this entire podcast and the conversation. I truly felt the flow, and I love the energy and then the authenticity with which you speak to the soul of people, and then just your story. And this is what you are as a person. So I really appreciate the authenticity that you bring in every conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I had a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.